New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth. To live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge. On the growing edge.
And now, here's Ali.
Hello and welcome to Growing Edge Live. I'm Ali Benjamin, and it is my great joy to be here today. Here at the Growing Edge, we're all about having conversations with soul-centered individuals that channel their time, their talent, their energy, their passion, their resources, their joy into doing good work in the world and coming together in love. And today we have a beautiful guest, a friend of mine, Nithya Shanti, and he's joining us from India. And let's bring Nithya on. And there he is. Hey, Nithya. So good to see you.
Good to be here. Thanks, Ali.
Yeah. So whereabouts are you?
Right now, I'm in India, in Pune, which is close to Mumbai or Bombay, as some people know it. This is in West India. That's where I am.
And this is, did you grow up where you live at the moment?
I actually lived here many years ago. I was actually born in the US, believe it or not. And I grew, my parents were studying and working in the US. And then we moved back to India when I was still a kid. And I've grown up mostly in Pune and in Delhi. And then, of course, I've traveled all over the place. But yeah, I've been in Pune. Pune is like a home base.
Nice, nice. Well, Nithya is a friend of mine. We met, gosh, I was trying to think how long ago it's been. Maybe 10, 13, I don't know how many years ago, but some time ago. You were here in Utah, where our center, the thesatyacenter, is. And I don't know how we bumped into each other, how we found each other, but we had you come and give a talk, and that was a beautiful event, and that sort of started our friendship. And then whenever you came to the US, you inevitably came to Utah. You had family here, and we would have you come and speak. We've done a meditation retreat together, and I just absolutely adore you. I really feel a closeness to what you do in the world. I feel that you and I have some common visions for who we want to be and how we want to be in the world. And so I've followed you and watched you and really appreciate what you do in the world and the lives that you touch. And I'm so excited to have you here on Growing Edge Live so that our audience can get to know you and connect with you and learn from you, because you are an amazing teacher. And I intentionally didn't read your bio because I want you to share your story. And you shared a little bit about you were actually born in the US. I didn't know that to begin with. You told me that along the way, and that was interesting. So let's hear a little bit about your path from, you said you were born here. When did you move to India, and how did your journey progress? Have you always been a spiritually minded individual, or were you religious? Was your family religious? How did all of that sort of start for you?
Yeah. So in my case, my father had come to study in the US at MIT. and my mother came along as well. She was also a physicist, and so they were working and living in the US. And then a year or two after I was born, they decided to move back to India, various family reasons and things. And so I've grown up mostly in India. And it's hard to say exactly where these things begin from and where the inclinations come from. But I would say I remember like super young, somebody asked me, what will you do when you grow up? And I had a very strange answer for this person. I said, I'm going to have a lot of friends all over the world. Strange answer. I'm going to have friends all over the world. I said, I'm going to have friends all over the world. And then somebody else asked me, what will you do when you grow up? And I gave a strange answer. I said, I'm going to be a sannyasi, which in India means a person who has left all other preoccupations and is trying to understand what is truth, what is free truth. That's a sannyasi. Like you could call it a renunciant. These are strange answers to get from a little kid. And it blossomed later on in life when I got interested in meditation and I attended some meditation retreats. And suddenly I had this something very deep in me ignited and say, yeah, this is the purpose of life, to really understand truth, not just go with what we are told is true, but to really inquire, to really investigate. Not to take secondhand answers, but to really, and yeah, secondhand answers can be useful, but don't just take them at face value. Really inquire, really check, really experiment. And I was lucky to meet some, you could say, genuine spiritual seekers who I felt weren't claiming to know anything, but there was a certain flame of aspiration that being around them ignited that in me as well. So that's what got me interested in taking the next step. I left my corporate job and I became a monk at some point. I was 22, 23 years old. I became a Buddhist monk and I lived as a monk for about 6 years in Thailand and Sri Lanka mostly.
Now you just brush over that. That's like shocking. So you actually went to university and went into the world of business, and so based on the answers you gave as a young one, who you were going to be when you grew up, there's a little bit of a space between those two things. So how did you? Obviously, you were influenced by society and your parents, and you went to university and attempted to go mainstream. So how was that for you, knowing as that you had this deeper feeling or inclination to do something different than that? So how did you reconcile this feeling inside of making friends with people all over the world and somehow being a truth seeker with, fitting into the box, so to speak?
I think one of the things society does well is to make us forget these intuitions and make us and just say, listen, be practical and choose a course of study that's going to work. And so I also forgot, and I think at some point I just wanted to be a fashion designer because that's where I thought it's a cool job. You get a lot of money. You get to hang out with beautiful people. I wanted to be a fashion designer. And I was also caught up in the usual sense of, trying to prove, feeling inadequate. I think for me, one of my strong characteristics that emerged was inferiority complex, never feeling good enough, never feeling really okay. And then the flip side to that is you try to project like, oh, you're doing so well. You project, I would project, oh, I'm so whatever capable, but actually it's covering an inner inadequacy. So there was a lot of mental comparison, never feeling good enough physically, mentally, emotionally, occupationally, intellectually, at any level, not feeling good enough. And always trying to fill that hole. In my case, the filling the hole came through reading. I would read a lot, try to find my answers through knowledge. I kept this diary where I ferociously wrote down, any quote, any practice, any idea that I felt can improve my life, I would write down. And I had a pretty nice, thick diary of all these ideas. And I was actually pretty diligent. 3 times a day, I would open my diary and I would read it. And I would remind myself how important it is to, for example, not get angry or not criticize others or not be judgmental, how important it is to live in the present moment. And intellectually, it all made such good sense, but I just struggled to live it. And it was a big mystery for me. And then I doubled down on something's wrong with me. How come I know all this? It makes logical sense. And I just can't live it. Something must be wrong with me. So that actually became Jiddu Krishnamurti says, a truth known and not lived becomes a poison. So in my case, even that truth became a poison. It became one more thing to hit myself on the head with, that I'm not even doing this. And I think for me, the real shift happened with mindfulness meditation, insight meditation, where for the first time I glimpsed presence. Until then, I'd heard about presence, but this time I actually tasted it. See, we imagine, Ali, that we are seeing, we are hearing, we are feeling, but actually we are thinking. Like right now also, how much are we truly in touch with this moment, and how much are we in the cloud of concepts? And in fact, that's one of the reasons I kind of glossed over that part. Not that it's not important, it has its place. But for me, too much of time spent on telling my story, it's just that much more, it's a story after all. And yeah, sure, it can be interesting, it can be inspiring also at some level. So that's the reason I don't go that much into that. I would much rather investigate the nature of what is our experience right now. And there are so many interesting layers there to look at directly through our experience. But yes, I did go through that phase, and meditation was a big key to begin with, a very powerful key. I began meditating morning and evening, and this led to a lot of, at one level, very positive breakthroughs. My memory improved, my concentration improved. I began doing very well academically. Confidence improved. But also a flip side, which might be, I don't know how you'll describe this, an energetic opening up. So I had this burning sensation in my heart, which lasted almost 3 or 4 years, maybe longer. There was a continuous burning sensation. And I now would look at it as some kind of an energetic purification that was happening. And so it was very painful at one level. At the same time, it was like waking up from a dream, and at least glimpsing reality as it is, without my opinions and judgments and projections. So like coming into, I call it literally waking up into a new universe, the universe of being, the universe of presence. And then that, once you have that taste, the Buddha says, Sabba rasang dhamma rasang janati. This is Pali language, which means there are many tastes in this world. You can taste many things. You can taste, we don't just mean the taste of eating, but the taste of any experience, the taste of being with friends, the taste of being in nature, the taste of having a good time, and of course the unpleasant things. But the taste of truth, the Buddha says, beats them all. So whatever your imagination of what the good time is, what will totally fulfill you, being with family, being with friends, doing the work you love, having all the money, but actually, that actually is not going to fulfill you. That will be a good dream. But what truly fulfills you is the taste of truth itself, the taste of being itself. So that is what, I think that is what you could say hooked me. And it literally, it continues to do so. It just extricated me from this dream world that I had imagined of what it would take for me to be happy. What kind of job, what kind of salary, what kind of place I would live, what kind of reputation I would have, or all of that. I could just at least begin to see through that. And for me, at least, it became very clear that my purpose in life is quite different. That's what put me on that path.
Mm-hmm. So you went to, you were a monk for a good period of time, I think 6 years. Is that right? Yeah. So you went from university work, and then you went to become a monk. That must have been an amazing journey of quiet discovery, letting go of a lot of all of that you just shared, and getting a real long drink of the truth. Being in such an environment must really be, I'm thinking of it myself. For myself, that would be very challenging. But I guess surrendering to that lifestyle, that path that isn't like most people are experiencing in their everyday lives must have been what happened to this feeling, this burning feeling, once you landed in Thailand or wherever you've first landed as you became a monk? what happened to that feeling and all of the story and everything that sort of propelled you to that point? Did it disappear right away? Was it a year, 2 years, 3 years? How long did it take for you to sort of release that persona?
Yeah, I'm trying to answer you not just through my mind, but trying to get in touch with that. So it's a process of quenching. It's a process of, I wouldn't say it just disappears or anything. It's an attenuation. And as we all know, when we are growing the most, it doesn't feel like growth always. It sometimes feels like the opposite of growth, right? I think it was Carl Jung who said that, what your ego hates, your soul enjoys. Your soul loves, kind of thing. He may not have said exactly those words, but essentially what he's saying that what you think is really good for you, your soul is so disappointed. But when you think you're going through a really hard time, that's when your soul is loving it. So it was, even though I chose that path and I wanted that path, and at one level I was very grateful for that path and that process, it wasn't always fun. It was a lot of inner, like, just because you go to an idyllic monastery or you're with nice companions and in a relatively serene place doesn't mean the inner storm goes away. It doesn't mean the inner judgment goes away. It doesn't mean my tendency to criticize myself, evaluate myself, compare myself. In this case, I'd compare myself to my teachers and always feel I'm nowhere, I don't practice as hard as them, I'm not as sincere as them, I'm not as dedicated, disciplined as them. So that same tendency just takes a new shape, right? And outwardly, my teachers could be so happy with me and feel I'm making such good progress. But inwardly, I feel like, come on, I'm so slow, nothing's happening. But one gets to see that again and again. And I think in my case, at least, I don't know about other people, but in my case, it was a case of very gentle, like a rough stone. And over a period of time, just with stroke after stroke, whether it's with sandpaper or whatever, but very gently, or maybe like the river, the stream that rolls over that rock, very, very gently smoothing out. And it's not about even the ending of anything. Like, even if today I had that burning sensation, I have realized it's not about the experience. I came up with this little saying, actually. I came up with this little poetic kind of way of saying it. In the heart of hearts, peace never departs. So that's the thing. It's not that the experience, I don't claim that I am beyond all burning and all irritation and all reactivity or anything like that. I don't claim any such things for myself. And it would be very false and hypocritical of me to do that. But there is a recognition, which is also undeniable, that there is something beneath that is untouched, unshaken, unaffected, stainless, secure, unconfined, undefined, forever receptive of whatever these waves are on the surface of the ocean. So that the whatever you want to call it, the practice or the surrender or the giving myself, it did reveal that, it did uncover that, and now that's always available. Now whether one is always representing that or not is a different matter, but it's always available. That background is always available, and for that I'm grateful.
So maybe there's a did you enjoy yourself? Did you make good friends in the monastery? Was there
I had a very good time. I loved my time. I really enjoyed. In fact, I did not leave my monastic life because I didn't enjoy it. It's funny. I enjoyed it too much. And I actually felt I'm in a comfort zone. This is my tendency to not allow myself to be comfortable. That I felt I'm too comfortable. I'm enjoying it too much. Spiritual practice can't be this fun. It can't be this good. Like, I need to suffer a bit. I need to be more austere. I need to really. It shouldn't be that. So literally, in my case, I felt I'm being selfish. At some point, I felt I'm focusing too much on my own growth. And somehow, now whether that's an illusion or whether that's real, but a sense of, I would just say the heart busted open. Like they're the mental awakening, and then they're the heart awakening. And at some level, I just realized that this life is not just for my liberation or my freedom or my comfort. It's about showing up and I was called to, share whatever I'd learned in a more contemporary way, or at least I don't know if it's a more contemporary, but at least a way that for me seemed more enjoyable, more peaceful, not peaceful, more. I wanted to be creative with what I'd learned, and not just. I wanted to be creative with what I learned and share it in a more creative way, and not just in the typical spiritual, philosophical way. So I guess I was called to do that, and I followed that call. That call took me to being a monk, and that call also took me out of my monastic life.
Is there someone in your brotherhood, I don't know if that's the correct terminology, but was there someone that you really connected with in a deep way, or maybe you could share a story of a connection, someone that really made a heart print, whether it was
so many interactions and stories, and there's so many things which touch you in subtle ways and deep ways. Let me think what's coming. One of my teachers, Ajahn Chah, this is a story from before my time in the monastery, but it's a story that always touches me. Ajahn Chah was walking with some other monks through a field, and there was a big rock, a big boulder in that field. So Ajahn Chah just stopped and he asked the other monks, "Is this rock heavy? Is this rock heavy?" So they're like, "It's a huge rock. It's a huge boulder. It's of course it's heavy. It's huge. It's heavy. It's very heavy." So Ajahn Chah smiled and said, "Not if you don't lift it up." And he had this way of just making it so straightforward. He would, we say, "How do you do? How are you doing today? How are you?" Ajahn Chah had a habit of walking around and asking, "How are you suffering today? How are you suffering today?" And sooner or later, one monk will say, "I am suffering today. Just in a bad mood, or it's just so heavy and everything's so hard." And Ajahn Chah had a very simple response to that. He said, "You must be holding on to something. You must be holding on to something. Step over here where it's always cool. Step over here where it's always cool." What is over here? Over here is not a place. Over here is presence. Over here is step out of your story, step out of your identities, step out of your confinement. Don't force yourself out of heaven. Come back here to where it's always cool. Step back here where it's always cool. So these are not, it's not exactly the answer to your question, but I'm just telling you right now whatever's coming up in my mind. Things that really touched me, things that created a shift. Ajahn Chah said things like, when you let go a little bit, you have a little bit of peace. When you let go a lot, you have a lot of peace. When you let go completely, you have complete peace. All your struggles come to an end. And so I would practice that. I would again and again check, how much am I suffering right now? What am I holding on to right now? How tightly am I holding on to it right now? What am I believing? Somebody asked the Ajahn Chah that, should we be a Buddha or Bodhisattva? This is a bit of a debate in the Buddhist world. Should you get enlightened, or should you postpone your enlightenment to benefit everybody? Or should you, should you be an Arahant? Should you be a Buddha? Should you be a Bodhisattva? This is a Buddhist kind of, those who are familiar with Buddhism will understand what I'm talking about. So Ajahn Chah had a very curious reply to that. He said, don't be a Buddha. He said, don't be a Bodhisattva. Don't be an Arahant. Don't be an enlightened being, in other words. Don't be anybody. The moment you're anybody, you will suffer. So what a powerful teaching. He's saying that it is your mistaken understanding of who you are that is creating your troubles. It is a misunderstanding, and it will continue to bother you as long as you adhere to that misunderstanding. So I think that's what my, the process, you began with, tell me your bio. Right? And so what is the bio? The bio has to come from a belief that I am this body and mind. There has to be a very strong belief. I am this body and mind. This body and mind was, I'm told, born in Boston, right? And I'm told many things about myself. But what is my direct experience? Is that my bio? I ask people, I like to ask this, I'll ask you also. Ali, do you remember being born?
No.
You remember being born? Very fascinating. Nobody I've met remembers being born. You were told you were born on so-and-so date, so-and-so place. You were told these things. So no one had actually an experience of being born. So in our direct experience, the world is born. We are not born. When I wake up in the morning, I say I wake up, but more accurate is the room wakes up. The room appears. And then the bathroom appears. And you wash your face and whatever. These things appear, They appear to us. So the big shift here is from imagining you are a face in the world to recognizing you are space for the world. This is a completely different, this is a whole paradigm shift, right? So yes, and at a relative level, of course, I was born and, whatever, my age is so-and-so, and these things happen in my life. At a relative level, that's absolutely true. But we shouldn't deny there is my, what's called my public face, and then there's my private face. There's a view in and there's a view out. So the view in is I'm a face in the world. And the view out is I'm space for the world. I can't actually see my face. I can only imagine my face. So in my direct experience, I have no age. I was not born. And just like I don't remember falling asleep at night, I don't think I'm going to die because I don't remember falling asleep. So I will not be present on my death. I will not be present. So why should I worry about my death if I'll not be present at my death? And in order to see you, I have to forget every other face I've seen in the world, including my own face. Otherwise, I can't see your face. I'm imagining something about you. In order to really meet you, I've got to forget everything. In other words, I've got to empty myself. In other words, to receive this experience, I've got to be absent. Presence implies absence. I've got to forget every last detail about everything in my life, including what happened 2 seconds ago, in order to receive what's happening here. The more empty I am, the more present, receptive, sensitive, tuned in, aligned I am. So this is the strange thing in this whole journey, that we have to. One of the beautiful teachings, Swami Sarvapriyananda says that it's about humanizing your divinity and divinizing your humanity.
Everything you're saying is very, I find myself almost hypnotized, like wanting to, really have an experience of what you're saying, So as you're saying that, from the outside, I'm a face in the world, but from the inside, I'm a space for reality. I mean, you could have just started with that and we could have had silence for an hour and just contemplated that. It's so, like, that's not something to be brushed over. It doesn't feel like, but we're having a conversation. And so it's interesting to consider such depth.
We can return. I think we are keeping some practice toward the end of this conversation. So we can return.
Yeah,
we can explore this. We can explore this some more toward the end.
Yeah. Why don't we take a quick break? We'll take a couple-minute break and we'll be right back.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center, Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Thesatyacenter, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
The New Thought Men's community proudly presents New Thought Men's Summit, Foundations, an online conference, September 22nd through 27th. Register today at www.newthoughtmens.community, featuring 22 New Thought speakers, ministers, and visionaries, sharing their wisdom of modern spiritual masculinity. New Thought Men's community, empowering wholeness, centered in spiritual living.
Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth. To live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge. On the growing edge.
And now, here's Allie.
We're back with Nithya Shanti. So we talked a little bit about the fact that we're going to do a little practice in about 15, 20 minutes or so. Before that, I want to explore, I know I keep going back and forth between wanting to sort of interview you, but then I want to have more of share some spiritual truths with us, Nithya. So I'm just juggling those two things. What I think I want to explore with you, what's your mission, vision, and purpose currently? We've kind of just gone right into some depth, but I'd like people to know what you're actually doing in the world and why you're doing that.
To be very straight, I don't think so much in those terms anymore. Like right now, my purpose is to answer this question. And if I can answer this question honestly, not just from the surface, but from as connected and empty and open a space as possible, then that would be a fulfillment of my purpose. See, I'll tell you how I came to this. I had this, I think I came across these near-death experience. You must have heard of NDEs, and so many people have almost died and then come back, or they've actually died and they've come back. And a lot of them talk about doing a past life review, reviewing this life, and then checking if they achieved their purpose or not. And it turns out some of them have achieved it, some of them have less than achieved, some of them have overachieved it. So that got me thinking that if you can overachieve your purpose, then what would it look like to overachieve your purpose a millionfold? To overachieve your purpose a billionfold. What would that even look like? It's a thought experiment. So for me, the way that looks is to define purpose as whatever is happening, allowing that to happen with as little resistance, as little splintering, and even if there is splintering and resistance, to include that in the experience. So to show up with as much just like I said, to be as open and available to each experience. To me, that's the purpose. And now what comes out of it? Because, what do we really know? That, okay, so suppose I spoke to 100 people or 1,000 people or even 1 million people. Somehow I spoke to 1 million people. Is that really better than having one kind conversation with a kid who's disturbed or crying? Is that really better? How do I know that's better? How can I know for sure? that talking to 1 million people is better, right? I don't know that for sure. Or even not even talking, just sitting quietly and radiating loving wishes to my family, to my neighbors, to my community, to the world. Nobody knew, nobody saw, nobody could say, hey, you're a great guy, you helped that kid, or you spoke to 1 million people, right? So for me, that's closer to how I define it. It's more about really showing up, and I'm fulfilling my purpose each time I show up. And what is it like? And here again, the thought experiment. So what happens if you don't fulfill your purpose? Right? Haven't all of us learned from the people in our lives who we perceive as not fulfilling their purpose, going down a dark path, making choices that we would never make for ourselves? Haven't we all learned from that? So are they not in some sense our greatest teacher? They said, don't go down that path. If you get onto those prescription drugs with a vengeance, that's what happens. If you get onto, lying, deceiving, that's what happens. We've seen it. That happened to uncle so-and-so, auntie so-and-so, right? Neighbor so-and-so. So then have they not fulfilled their purpose? Maybe better than any motivational speaker could do. So how do I know that even my, so-called going on the dark side and having no impact or wasting my talent, how do I know that's in the larger sense? How do I know that's not fulfilling purpose? It's such a deep question, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think for me, it's just about showing up. Show up, share your gifts, synergize with the gifts of others to whatever extent you can, and that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I've really been looking at this myself. I was actually talking to my husband this morning about this, not exactly what we're talking about, but, really embodying what I've learned and what, considering all of my goals and missions and visions and purpose statements that I've created over the years, and goals that I've attempted to achieve. And it seems more and more I talk to people, and people are more interested in what you're talking about, which is what I'm, thinking you're talking about, is actually being present, being engaged with the moment, not being as harsh on ourselves, with this sort of mentality of striving, of achieving, of building wealth, or whatever it is that we've been, accustomed to do in the mainstream life. It seems like spiritual teachers that I've had the opportunity to talk to, they're resistant of even playing that role as much anymore. And it's more about that inner journey and being the light, and just simply experiencing whatever arises with a sense of being all in. And I paint. That's, when I'm left to my own devices, when no one's looking, or if everyone's looking, it doesn't matter, I'm going to paint. I find great comfort in it. It's very soothing and centering. It quiets the chatter in my mind more than anything else that I do. And it's also, if I'm lucky, it can lead to an expanded experience of oneness. And it doesn't happen all the time. But when I'm lucky, and I never use the word lucky, but I'm using it today. When I'm lucky, I really feel I'm on purpose. And it's not because of what I'm creating. It's not because of, I just made this beautiful desert scape, or, picture that I'm drawing. It's that I actually touched something that's always there, that my busy mind and my addictions and all of it, even the painting, can distract me from feeling. And so I'm sure we all, many of us have ways of feeling really present, really connected to ourselves, in a sense of not the physical self, but this deeper sense of self. I don't really know where I'm going with this, but as you're sharing,
I would just add to what you're saying that I don't want to make those people listening to this who do have goals and dreams and a sense of mission, vision, purpose, that they're wrong, and that somehow what Ali is describing, what I am describing, is somehow superior. I don't want to give that sense, because Ali's been through that phase. You've built a whole community and you've done so much, and I've traveled the world and I've taught all over the place, and I've had my own sense of goals and whatever. And I think it's a distillation that brings us to wherever it brings us, And who's to know that even this is some kind of a final? It's just what you asked me the question, and this is just in this moment what seemed most accurate for me at this time. And tomorrow, if you see me having a very very well-defined vision, mission, goal, that would just be that moment. And you'll say, hey, Nithya, you said you're, no, I have this vision, I have this mission, I want to touch these lives, I want to make this difference. And that's totally valid. And that's totally
absolutely
fine.
Yeah. And I feel that too, because I actually love to lead people through a process to really connect with their purpose. And so I too have visions and missions and purposes, and I can be very driven too. And I think those moments that I was talking about, when I'm deep, lucky in having that expanded experience, only quenches or fulfills or nourishes me so that I can show up in my actual life. True. And I'm currently living with my my daughter and granddaughters are living with my husband and I. And when I really tune in to why am I here, it's not about building the spiritual community as much as it's about being a grandmother.
So good.
And so when I'm painting, which is very comforting and soothing, and I do have quite a bit of anxiety and frustration, and so it helps during those moments to take me to a place where I can find my well, or my connection, or I'm nourished, so that I can show up and be a really present grandmother, or a really caring wife, or someone that's at the grocery store and help someone out with their groceries, or whatever it is I want to do in any given moment to really honor this opportunity that we all have of being alive, if it's even real. I think it's real. I think that's what I'm getting from what you're saying, what you're inspiring in me through your words and through what you're sharing, is I just want more of it. I want to be more present with those that are important to me and those I've yet to meet. I'm at 62. I am, on one hand, I'm, if I'm in my ego, I can feel, oh my God, I'm 62, for God's sakes. I'm coming to the end. And then on the other hand, I feel, like you said, I'm not an age. I'm, not my past. I'm who I am. And that's constantly changing, constantly being revealed through me. And yeah.
Would you like us to get into a practice in the last few minutes?
Yeah, I would love that. Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful. So the practice we're going to do is not about getting to some kind of an altered state. It's about getting very familiar with this state, this experience. So I'd like us to begin with our eyes open and just notice that there are, quite likely in whatever environment you're in, many things. Even if there are few things, there's still things. And how do you know a thing? You know a thing by its background. So I have a laptop in front of me, and there's a laptop and it has a distinct background. There's a wall behind it. On this side, there's a couch behind it. On this side, there's a floor behind it. So there's a laptop and there is the ground. In your case, there might be something else. There might be a painting on a wall. There might be a piece of furniture. There might be some footwear. And you know that footwear is separate from the floor because you can see an outline. But how often, or have you ever considered that the entire visual field, so just defocusing your eyes slightly and taking in the entire visual field, so without necessarily rotating your eyes, just keeping your eyes relatively straight, the entire visual field, is that a thing? Is a visual field a thing? Does it have a boundary or an outline the way some of the other things within the visual field have? This is a very fascinating question. I don't know if you've considered it before. And while I'm told by the world that I have two eyes, in my private reality, I don't see two visual fields, I just see one visual field. So in my direct experience, I have a single eye, not two eyes, because I see one visual field. And I can't decide if it's big or small because I have nothing to compare it with. I can't see anything above this visual field. I can't see anything below it, to the left of it, to the right of it. It just is. So if you want, you can close your eyes or keep them open, that's fine. And I'd like you to come to the auditory field. Again, here you can hear these words, which means you can distinguish these words from their background. There are these words and then there's the background. So this sound, as well as any other sound in your environment, you can distinguish it from its background. Maybe there's a air conditioning unit, maybe there's a bird, maybe there's somebody in the other room. And you can distinguish their sound from other sounds. So, oh, that's my child playing, or that's a bird, or that's my dog, or that's the washing machine. But what about the entire auditory field? Is that a thing? Does it have a boundary? Can you contrast the entire auditory field with some other auditory field, except in your imagination? This is fascinating. Have you ever considered this question before? Taking in the entire auditory field. We could do the same thing with every sense door, but let's just come to feelings, sensations. Again, there can be distinct sensations, like my hand is touching my leg, so I can actually feel, yeah, hand touching leg, so that's a thing. And then I can feel that around that, there's some kind of a different sensation. So similarly, there are many separate sensations, and I can imagine, okay, that's my legs being crossed, that's my trouser touching my leg, or that's the air in the atmosphere touching the skin. I can imagine all of that. You can do the same. But what's it like to take in the entire sensation field, tactile field? Does it have a second? Something to compare it with. What's above it? What's below it? What's around it? And without the imagination, the memory of it looking a certain way, being a certain way, having a boundary, it's just this. And the same with thoughts. This thought, that thought, this image, that image, this concept, that concept. But what about the entire field of thought within which all these thoughts arise? Does that have a second? Is that big? Is that small? Is that good? Is that bad? And again, notice how I've split up our reality by saying things like seeing and hearing and feeling and thinking. But can you see how that's also a concept? Can you really find a dividing line between seeing and hearing? Hearing and feeling? Feeling and thinking? Between you and the world? Have you ever looked for a dividing line between you and the world? Have you ever been able to find it? Can you find it now? So there's one field of experience. There's one field of experience. And any thoughts you have about it, reactivity you have about it, preferences, opinions, fears, whatever, that's part of that experience. That's part of that one field of experience. Even your thoughts about past and future are part of that one experience. Is it a good experience? I don't know. What do I compare it with? Anything I compare it with is yet another arising, yet another experience. Just this. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it big? Is it small? I don't know. It's just this. I have nothing to compare it with. Ajanja asked the monks, "Is this rock heavy?" And they immediately replied, "Of course it's heavy, it's huge." And then he said, "Not if you don't pick it up. Not if you don't lift it up." This entire experience, is it heavy? Not if you don't pick it up. Not if you don't try to meddle with it. So listen to this voice like it's your voice, because it is your voice. In this moment, this is your voice. And it's here to tell you, everything is exactly the way it is. Wake up to your private reality. Recognize that you are space for the world. Yes, in one sense, you are a face in the world. But you always wear your face away, isn't it? You wear your face on the mirror. You wear your face on a selfie stick. You wear your face in a photograph. Here, at zero distance, you're not a face. You're absent. You disappear. You disappear in favor of the world. So acknowledge your private reality, which is that none of this defines you, none of this confines you. And you meet it like this, with mirror-like awareness. Then you are the sky, and all of this is weather. Then you are the ocean floor, and all of this are superficial currents. Then you are the screen on which all these movies are projected, untouched by any happenings. And so it is. And so it is.
And so it is.
And so it is.
Thank you, Nithya. It's really been a treat, a pleasure, a delight to have you as our guest today. And I trust that what we've shared here today ripples out and touches the hearts and minds and bodies of many. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. And the one taste, the one taste of this awareness, this consciousness, that's where we are all one. No matter outwardly, different nationalities, different orientational belief systems. At this time in the US, different political beliefs. But deep down, it's one consciousness. It's different fingers, one hand. Yeah? Different hands, one body. Different bodies, one truth.
If you could sum it up in one word, what does the world need now?
I don't think it needs anything. It's fine the way it is. It's doing fine.
Well, thank you again. And thank you, everyone, for being here with us today. And I will see you next time. And we'll be back with my guest, Jafon Seeley. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth. To live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge.